Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always ready to dig in.
Awesome. Today we're tackling something that might seem kind of familiar at first, cURL.
Ah, yeah, cURL. I feel like everyone's at least heard of it.
Right. It's one of those command line tools that's been around forever. You probably know it can download files from the internet, but trust me, this deep dive is going to show you just how much more it can do.
Color me intrigued.
So our main source this time is this really in-depth guide to cURL. And right off the bat, they hit you with this crazy stat. cURL is estimated to be on over 20 billion devices.
20 billion. Wow, that's mind-boggling.
Right. It really shows you just how widespread this thing is. It's practically everywhere.
Like almost 3 devices for every person on the planet. That's a testament to how fundamental cURL is to the internet as we know it.
I know, right? And honestly, I used to think of cURL as like just a basic tool for grabbing files. But this guide dives into all these advanced features like security best practices and even how pros use it for automation.
I'm starting to see why we're doing a whole deep dive on this.
For example, did you know that cURL can actually resume downloads that got interrupted?
Oh, yeah. That's huge for reliability.
Yeah.
Think about downloading like a massive data set for your research or a critical software update, and your connection drops halfway through. Without that resume capability, you'd have to start all over again.
Ugh, I've been there. Total nightmare. So this is like built-in insurance for your downloads,
Yeah.
especially these days when, internet connections can be a bit flaky.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that can be flaky, let's talk security. The guide makes a big deal about how cURL isn't just for, the hacker in a hoodie stereotype we see in movies.
Yeah, it actually has a ton of features specifically for doing things the right way, security-wise.
Exactly. I mean, cURL does sometimes get that bad boy reputation, but in reality, it provides all the building blocks you need for good security practices. For example, it supports things like OAuth tokens, which are pretty much the standard for secure authentication these days.
That's good to know, especially when you're dealing with APIs and all sorts of web services. And speaking of security, this quote from the guide really caught my eye. They say that messing up certificate validation is one of the most common security vulnerabilities out there.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's so easy to overlook.
But the cool thing is, cURL gives you the tools to validate those certificates properly, which could prevent some serious security headaches down the line.
Absolutely. We've seen countless data breaches and security incidents that could have been avoided if people had been properly validating those certificates.
It's like cURL is giving you the power to make sure you're connecting to the right server, not some imposter trying to steal your data.
Mm.
So already we've established that cURL is way more than meets the eye. But let's get practical here. This common use cases section in the guide was a real eye-opener for me. Turns out cURL is super important in these things called CI/CD pipelines.
Ah, yes, CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous delivery. For folks who might not be familiar, think of it like an automated assembly line for software.
Yeah, so developers write their code, it gets tested automatically, and then cURL helps deploy it to servers quickly and reliably.
Exactly. It's all about speed and making sure things run smoothly. And cURL plays a key role in that whole process.
The guide even gives specific examples, like using cURL to download and verify deployment scripts, or using headers for version control. It's all about making the process as efficient and error-proof as possible.
In the world of software development, where time is money, that's crucial.
Now, of course, it wouldn't be the tech world without a little friendly rivalry, right?
Right. Got to have that competition.
And the guide doesn't shy away from jumping into the whole cURL versus GET debate.
The classic battle. It's been raging for years. And to be fair, both tools are great for moving data around, but they each have their own strengths.
So how do you choose which one to use? Is it just personal preference, or are there situations where one is clearly better than the other?
Well, cURL is generally known for being incredibly flexible and supporting a wider range of protocols. YGET, on the other hand, is the go-to for recursive downloads, like if you need to grab an entire website.
Right.
So it really comes down to what you're trying to achieve.
Gotcha. So the right tool for the job makes sense. One other thing that caught my eye in the guide was this discussion about piping cURL's output, which sounded a little bit dangerous.
Ah, yes, the infamous cURL niche. It's this shortcut where you basically download and run a script all in one go. But yeah, it can be risky if you're not super careful about where that script is coming from.
So like a bit of a trust but verify situation.
Exactly. You always want to download and inspect the script before you run it. It takes a few extra seconds, but could save you from a major headache later.
Okay, good advice. So far, we've learned that cURL is way more than just a simple download tool. It's got all these security features, can be used for automation, and even has its own set of debates in the tech world.
And honestly, we've only scratched the surface. There's a whole lot more to explore, from advanced features to performance optimization techniques.
That sounds like a great place to pick up in part two.
So getting into some of those advanced features, one that really stood out to me in the guide is cURL's ability to handle rate limiting and bandwidth control.
Oh, yeah, that's super practical. I'm thinking about those times when you're on like a limited connection, or maybe you don't want to overload a server with too many requests at once.
Exactly. It's all about being a good internet citizen.
Oh, wait.
With cURL, you can actually set specific download speeds.
Yeah.
You can say, hey, cURL only use this much bandwidth, so you don't hog all the resources.
That's really cool. Like a speed dial
Yeah.
for your downloads.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And for those who like a little visual feedback, you can even combine this with a progress bar. So no more just staring at a blank terminal wondering if anything's happening.
Nice. Speaking of things that can be a little bit of a black box sometimes, the guide also dives into how cURL handles proxies. I'll admit, proxies have always been kind of a mystery to me.
Yeah, they can be a bit tricky. The cURL actually makes working with them pretty straightforward. You can specify different types of proxies, like HTTP or SOCKS5, and even ones that require authentication.
So whether I'm behind a corporate firewall or trying to access content from a different region, cURL can handle it.
That's right. It's like having a secret passageway through the internet. And the cool thing is, cURL gives you fine-grained control over how that proxy behaves. You can set timeouts, retries, custom headers, the whole shebang.
Wow, so much control. It really is like a Swiss Army knife for network connections. Okay, shifting gears a bit, the guide also talks about error handling and debugging, which, let's face it, everyone needs at some point.
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
No.
I'm sure we've all seen our fair share of SSL certificate problem errors.
Too many to count. So what does the guide say about dealing with those?
Well, it really stresses the importance of verifying those SSL certificates, and it even gives step-by-step instructions on how to do it properly. It also covers some cool tricks for troubleshooting, like capturing detailed transfer information or logging errors to a file so you can analyze them later.
That's super helpful. It's like having a detective's toolkit for when things go wrong.
Exactly. You got to have those tools. Now, we've talked a lot about features, but what about the people behind cURL? The guide has this great section on community insights and debates, and honestly, it gets pretty lively.
Oh, I bet. People get passionate about their tools.
Oh yeah, they definitely do. And one of the hottest debates, of course, is the infamous cURL fish that we talked about earlier, that shortcut for downloading and running a script all at once.
Right. We talked about how that can be risky if you're not careful about where you're getting that script from.
Exactly. And the community is pretty divided on this one. Some developers love the convenience, but security folks are always sounding the alarm about the potential dangers. It's a real trade-off.
So it seems like the main takeaway is to be extra careful and only use that shortcut when you absolutely trust the source.
Couldn't agree more. And of course, no discussion about cURL would be complete without mentioning the eternal cURL versus TOGET debate.
It's like the ultimate command line showdown.
Right. It never seems to end. And the guide does a nice job of breaking down the strengths and weaknesses of each tool. Like we said before, cURL is known for its flexibility and broad protocol support, while TOGET really shines when you need to download an entire website or do some serious file mirroring.
So once again, the best choice depends on the specific job you're trying to do.
Exactly. But one thing that's clear is that the cURL community is incredibly active and supportive. There are tons of resources out there, forums, blog posts, you name it. So you're never really alone when you're working with this tool.
That's awesome to hear. It's amazing to me how this little command line tool has become such a fundamental part of the internet. It's used by everyone, from developers to system admins to, everyday folks who just want to get things done.
And it's not just about practicality either. There's a certain elegance to cURL's simplicity and power. It really gives you this sense of direct control over the network, which is a pretty cool feeling.
After all this talk about cURL, I'm kind of itching to fire up the terminal and start experimenting. What about you? Anything in the guide that really sparked your curiosity?
Oh, absolutely. There was this whole section on performance optimization that I thought was really interesting. I had no idea you could squeeze so much extra speed out of cURL. It's almost like a sport in itself.
Ooh, performance optimization. That sounds like a rabbit hole we could definitely fall into.
Lead the way. Okay,
Oh.
so lead the way. What's this about making cURL even faster?
Well, get this. The guide talks about enabling compression to make those files smaller, using multiple connections to download things faster, even tweaking those nitty-gritty network settings.
Multiple connections. So like downloading different parts of a file all at the same time. You got it. It's called parallel downloading, and cURL can totally handle it. Think of it as a whole team of movers carrying that heavy couch instead of one person struggling.
Makes sense, especially for massive data sets or if you need a bunch of files in a hurry.
Exactly. And the guide gets even deeper. It mentions things like TCP no delay and keep alive time.
Ooh, sounds technical.
They're all about reducing that tiny delay in communication, making things more efficient. Super helpful when you've got slow internet or huge files.
You know, one thing that always amazes me about cURL is how well it plays with other command line tools, like Total Team Player.
Right, it's like the glue that holds everything together. You can use it to download something and then immediately do something else with it, all in one smooth flow. Extract an archive, process JSON data, even scan for viruses.
So much power in one little tool. And it's not just about convenience, that opens up a ton of possibilities for automation.
Absolutely. You can build these incredibly complex workflows that would take forever to do manually. Imagine downloading the latest version of some software, verifying it, installing it, configuring it all automatically with one script. cURL can be the heart of it all.
So after this whole deep dive into the world of cURL, what's the big takeaway for our listeners? What should they remember?
I think it's this. Whether you're a seasoned developer, a system administrator, or just someone who loves the command line, cURL is a tool that's worth mastering. It's like a key to understand how the internet really works.
It's about taking control, automating things, becoming a power user. And it sounds like the learning never really stops.
That's what makes it so exciting. There's always something new to discover, a new technique, a new challenge.
It makes me want to fire up my terminal and start experimenting right now. And I challenge our listeners to do the same.
Pick one of those advanced features we talked about and give it a try in your own work. See what you could accomplish.
And don't forget to share your experiences, good or bad. We want to hear about it. We've included some great cURL resources in the show notes, so be sure to check those out.
And if you have questions or you just want to show off your cURL skills, come find us on social media using #DeepDiveCurl.
We're excited to see what you create. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.